SFYF Sports, man. It's Lamont, man. We back with another podcast video, man. Today we got another great episode for you guys. Before we get started, make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell to the video if you haven't done so already. Again, we appreciate all the engagement. We appreciate all the support as we're grinding to 20K. Again, we're just trying to pump out these episodes, put all this information out to you guys as it comes to us. And again, we appreciate all the support thus far. But today we got another great interview for you guys. We're bringing another former college head coach in who's had a lot of college experience at the D1 level, at the D2 level, JUCO level. And again, he's going to speak on a lot of topics NCAA related. We're going to speak on some NBA basketball as well. And again, just a lot of great topics about, the behind the scenes of NCAA basketball, what he feels about NBA basketball and things of that nature. Other than that, make sure you guys are joining our Facebook group, NBA GOAT Talk. Make sure you do that because we're going to be going live soon. You'll know when we go soon because I know all you guys are hitting the notification bell. I can tell but just by the comments and the likes that you've been putting on all the videos, so I appreciate that so far. But with all of that aside, we're going to go ahead and get straight to the guest. All right, and as you guys see from the title of the video, we got another special guest to the podcast today, man. And just like many of the guests that we brought on the show in the past, I love bringing people onto the show who've delved into the sports world, not just on the court but off the court as well. I love talking about their experiences, whether it's in professional or college basketball, getting an understanding of how they feel the culture of basketball and just sports in general is headed. And we'll also talk NBA basketball as we always do on this podcast show. But no further ado, man, we're going to go ahead and introduce this guy into the show. His name is Adam Gordon, man. I met this guy at a coaching conference called Rising Coaches out in North Carolina. Man, that was a great coaching seminar. I learned a lot there just in a couple days. And we're just going to go ahead and introduce him in. How you been doing, Adam?
I've been doing great. Thanks for having me on the show. It's crazy that conference was like almost a year and a half ago at this point.
I know, man. It doesn't seem like it was that long ago, but it definitely was. But the one thing I know for a fact is that I did learn a lot. Like, it really helped show me what direction I wanted to go in as a coach. Just with the connections and meeting guys, like what I did want to do, what I didn't want to do. So I definitely learned a lot. But hopefully I can get back to another one pretty soon if we're able to have one. But just a little about yourself, and I'll tell you guys about him. Adam Gordon, he has a really, really deep basketball background. He started off as a student assistant at the University of Tampa, assistant basketball coach at the College of Central Florida, moved on as an assistant for men's graduate assistant for men's basketball at Clemson University, director of operations at University of Northern Colorado, moved on as the director of operations at Mississippi State, then moved on as the associate head coach for Southeast Missouri State University, and now he's currently one of the founders of Rising Coaches, what we just spoke on before. It's really a really good program for coaches, a mentoring program for coaches. So if you're a young coach and you're looking to get a little additional insight into the coaching world to see if it's something that you want to do, you should definitely check out Rising Coaches for those seminars or online sessions that are ran by him and his staff. But just, Adam, I want you to tell us a little bit about, your journey through basketball, and not just your journey through basketball, but just how, as a coach, going through the grind and just looking at some of the jobs you had. I know it's been a grind. How do you maintain that work and life balance with all of those jobs, having to move, looks like moving from different states, and then just that work-life balance, not just with yourself and your own sanity, but with your family as well?
Yeah, great question, and I appreciate the info. Hearing you talk about all the stops made me tired just listening to it. But coaching is something that I've wanted to do from the time I was like 12 years old. And Like I remember being a little kid, Saturday mornings, most kids go watch cartoons. I remember getting up Saturday morning and watching like the NBA games on the East Coast, and then like watching it all day long, and then going outside and playing ball and coming back and watching some more. So when you're young and single, like I was for the first, 10 years of my coaching career, those moves to different states, those different jobs, I mean, it's awesome. There's nothing more that I would want to be doing with my life. And I wasn't getting, some of those jobs you're getting paid $7,000 a year. The most I made in, I would say, my first 8 years of coaching was like $20,000 a year. So while that's like is a sacrifice, and it may seem crazy to some people to just pick up and move across the country for that little amount of money and work that many hours, like I loved it. I loved every second of it. Now, once I got older, I got married, I had kids. It gets a little harder, and you definitely have to start making decisions. Like something's got to give. You're either going to spend more time with your family, more time on your job, and that is a really hard balance. And that's just two factors. You also got to take into fact, like, you got to devote some time to your health and try to work out. You should be, whether you want to devote time to your faith or your finances. I mean, something's going to get sacrificed, and it is a really, hard part of the profession is trying to figure that out, and everyone's got to do it for themselves. And I don't know that there's a right answer, but it definitely is a challenge.
Yeah, that's, we just had a college guy on who spoke about his grind as a player. And that's the one thing that I like what you said was you just have to love what you're doing. As a player, you have to love what you're doing. And then especially as a coach, you really have to love what you're doing, because you're going to run into so many challenges with having to move, and then not just having to move, but the low pay, understanding that there's a ultimate end goal in it if you're really dedicated to the craft. And I think that's one of the main things that young coaches need to understand. It's not going to happen day one. You're not going to have, there's not going to be too many Brad Stevens like scenarios where you can get that big job when you're under 40. And I don't even think he was 35. He might have been just right at 35 when he got that job. So it's definitely a grind. So, definitely appreciate just looking at all these stops you made. Now, with that most recent stop, when you were the associate head coach at Southeast Missouri State University, and also with your experience as the director of operations at Mississippi State, another thing that I wanted to talk about, especially in the high ranks in college basketball. So you saw it from like a D1 level, and I'm not for sure. Is Southeast Missouri State, are they a D2?
They're Division I. They're in the Ohio Valley Conference with Murray State and Belmont.
Okay, wow, yeah. So with that being said, especially at that level, the one thing that we see going on in the NCAA right now, and I think this can really change NCAA basketball going forward. Players getting paid. I've spoken to a lot of players, especially during this pandemic, who want to start their own YouTube pages, get paid off their likeness. The balance between NCAA violations and things of that nature. Where do you see the NCAA is headed with regards to that specifically? And do you think this is something that players should push for?
Oh, 100%. I'm so glad that, this is finally coming to fruition after like years of putting public pressure on the NCAA to do it. I think it's crazy that like athletes haven't been able to make money off their own likeness. It's nuts, especially when you consider that like any other college student can do it. But if you're a athlete, you can't. Like that doesn't make sense to me. So yeah, I'm really excited. In terms of like what it's going to look like. I'm sure it's going to be, some chaos at the beginning. Because if I had to guess, there's probably not going to be too much guidance given from the NCAA. So each school is probably going to have to figure it out for themselves. And each state is going to be different, but hopefully it's a smooth, quick transition. And I think it's a great thing that athletes will be able to finally make some money off, their fame, which they've earned and deserve. And whether that's fame on a national level and they're able to cash in on that, or just like some notoriety in their community or on their campus. That's valuable. And there's no reason, people shouldn't be able to, we should be teaching these people how, you should teach athletes and people in college how they can make money. Like, if we're not teaching people how they can make money in college, like, what the hell are they in college for? The degree is great, but you get the degree to make money, right? So I think it's much needed. I think it's and it'll be interesting to see how it works, but I think they're definitely finally doing the right thing.
Yeah, I 100% agree with everything you said there. Especially I think a lot of people get this confused for, these universities just saying, you know what, we're paying each player a certain amount of money. And I say it's not necessarily about paying them directly. I said it's just really allowing them to make money off their own likeness. And a lot of people were surprised to hear that the NCAA was stopping players for a long time from doing that. Now, we've seen states like California open that door for athletes. I'm sure that's really going to start to spread like wildfire to other states. And I just think it's just a change now that the NCAA is just going to have to accept it. It's starting to become too big. States are now starting to implement laws. I think now their hand is going to get forced to make a decision on it. So 100% agree on that particular topic. And the second topic on the NCAA that I really wanted to hear from you about is the pandemic. And, do you see this changing the landscape of college basketball? We know how much money that sports drive to schools. And do you think there's just going to be pressure on these universities to find ways to get fans back in those seats because of the revenue that these programs bring in, especially the D1 and D2 schools?
Yeah, I think there's no question, this pandemic's changed everything, right? Every walk of life, including sports. And so for sure, this season's going to be unique because I don't think you'll see too many fans in the stands. Certainly not what we're used to. And then, I don't know how long it'll take before it does get back to normal. But I do think two things that that kind of will happen or that's being forced to happen because of the pandemic is, one, the amount of time that coaches take from their athletes, which is another issue that I think is important to talk about. When I don't know if you're familiar with this, but about, probably 10 years ago, the NCAA, before 10 years ago or whatever the year was, you weren't allowed to work your guys out in the summer. They were allowed to be on campus. They could work with the strength coach, but you couldn't be on the court going through workouts. Over the last 10 years, they've loosened, they've allowed it, and then they've continued to loosen the restrictions. And so college basketball has become a year-round sport where, you're only competing from those same months, but you're in practice, you're in full workouts 10 months out of the year, actually more than that. And I think that's crazy. So I think this pandemic has forced, obviously, time off for everybody, which I think is healthy. And I hope that coaches realize, man, we really don't need them under our direct supervision 24/7 for 12 months out of the year. So I hope some schools realize we're fine. The guys are actually excited to get back in the gym because we were forced to give them some time off. And that's how it should be. You hate to see athletes get the joy of the game taken from them because it becomes such a grind and they're not allowed to be a human being and experience other things along with their college experience. The other part of it is the money part, which you kind of touched on. And I think definitely programs are going to be forced to operate a lot leaner than they're used to. And I think for sure this year, with all the budget cuts and the furloughs that colleges are experiencing, but even going forward, even after COVID lifts, which hopefully happens sooner rather than later, I think schools will realize, well, maybe they didn't need this budget of millions of dollars and 20 people on their coaching staff to operate. They were able to do it, leaner this year. So why can't they do that moving forward? So I hope we continue to see that, like coaches cut back a little bit on the time demands, and, not that I hope that people's budgets get slashed, but I could see that happening. I could see, and you're seeing it right now. Programs from the high school level all the way up to NBA teams are cutting their budgets, cutting staffs down. And that's never good. That's not something, that is positive, but I do think you'll see people be a little bit more tight with their money.
That's correct. And I really appreciate one thing that you said in there about the practicing and the practice hours allowed over the summer, and it's starting to become more of a year-round sport. And I've become familiar with that as well, and I've definitely seen that. Some schools now, it's different from school to school. Some schools require students to stay over the summer, maybe take summer classes. But players are spending more time on campus. The one thing that I've seen a lot, at least from the player side of things, especially with D1 athletes, I run into so many D1 players who, after they graduate, a lot of them will just stop playing basketball altogether. Like, you'll ask them to join a league or to do that, and they don't want to. They're not interested. They're so burnt out from just the grind that they just don't want to play anymore. And as a coach, what you've experienced on your end, dealing with being the director of basketball operations at 2 different universities, now you're into rising coaches. Do you think, or have you seen that happen to any degree with coaches or personnel or staff with some of these teams? Can they get burnout as well?
Oh, the coaching burnout is really real, really real, because as much as the kids are putting time in, the coaches are putting probably a little bit more time in, or definitely more time in, because not only are they there at every practice, every workout, every weight session, but they're preparing for games, they're preparing for recruiting visits, they're on the road recruiting. The amount of hours coaches put in is astronomical. And again, unless you're at, the Power 5 level, you're really not making that much money doing it. And you're having to, again, make those choices of, you're sacrificing something. So whether that's your family, your relationships, your health, your finances, there's sacrifices being made. And so the burnout on the coach's side is definitely a real thing. I experienced it personally. And it's part of the reason I decided to step away from coaching, because I had just been so career driven for so long. I don't know that I ever really took a step back and was like, is this really what I still want to be doing? And it's funny because as soon as I decided to get out of the profession, I can't tell you the number of phone calls I got from people saying oh man, I've really been thinking about doing the same thing. What's it like? How is it? It's just kind of funny to see that. I think everyone experiences it at some point. But just because you experience it doesn't mean it's time for a change. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. I think that's something everyone's got to figure out for themselves. Sometimes you just got to hit the reset button, and find a way to get some physical space or some mental space to, really kind of recalibrate and, find your love again, for what you're doing. But like you said earlier, if you're not passionate about this, this is not the career for you, because the time you're going to put in to the amount of money you're going to make is not, it's not correlated properly. So there's a lot of other things you can do where you can make more money and work less, and have a lot more time for extracurriculars or whatever else it is. So yeah, but coaches get burnt out all the time. And that's part of why we started Rising Coaches, was because I think for a long time, coaches felt like they were going through that on an island, and coaches kind of are afraid to voice that because they don't want to seem like they're not appreciative for the opportunity they have, because jobs are so hard to get. And so part of, what we do with rising coaches, we connect them with other coaches and help them build genuine relationships. And we're not afraid to talk about things like this. And it's okay to, have doubts. That doesn't mean you're a bad person or a bad coach. Other people have those same doubts, and just giving people an outlet to share that and people to connect with that have been through it as well has proven to be really, really valuable. So that's one of the things that we try to, help our profession with.
Yeah, that's big time right there. And it's just, even with me and I'm on probably one of the lowest levels of coaching post grad players. I experience it, like the ups and downs, the emotions that you experience from coaching in game, the practices, dealing with stuff off the court. And I don't deal with nearly as much stuff as you might have dealt with when you were at Southeast Missouri State, or even as the director of operations at Mississippi. So again, if you're a coach out there, man, you got to be mindful of the grind, the time that it's going to take. And then you just got to have a lot of intestinal fortitude, because this job will take a lot. This job, especially at that level, can take a lot out of you if you allow it to.
Yeah, and there's no low levels of coaching too. I just wanted to point that out. I mean, if you're dealing with human beings just like anyone else, and you're trying to get a group of people to come together and play as one and sacrifice their own, stats and shot attempts for each other. So everyone's a ball coach. There's no hierarchy or anything like that. It's just different. It's just a different set of problems that you deal with at each level.
Hey, I'll take it then. Hey, so we'll go ahead and transition, because we talked about college, and it's how you dealt with things on that particular level. Now we're going to kind of transition on into, just professional level, with the NBA bubble, NBA basketball. Again, a lot of people, just like college, we didn't know where it would be headed when this pandemic hit. Once we found out basketball will be back, myself and a lot of people that I know, we were all excited just to see basketball back. I was really appreciative of the fact that when I saw the first NBA bubble game, they made it look and feel like an actual game, at least from the TV perspective. I know it probably looks vastly different from the player's perspective on the court, but with regards to the NBA bubble and the setup, what has surprised you most about just that setup? And were you surprised that teams actually came back and played?
I don't think I was too surprised, because the NBA is far and away the best run professional league in sports, in my opinion. They do such a good job, and have for decades, of being on the cutting edge of things. They seem to always make the right decisions when it comes to society, culture, whatever. They always tend to be, on the right side of issues. I know they spent a ton of money to get that bubble right. I think I read $75 million or something that they're spending down there in Orlando, but they definitely got it right. And, I think the proof is there. I think very few people, if any, I don't think anyone's gotten sick down there. They've been able to keep the virus away. They've been able to, put out a great product. Like you said, the games, they look great. They feel great when I'm watching them. And so I'm glad they kind of stepped up and were the first ones to get it going. And I'm glad that they have executed it at such a high level. And I'm from LA, so I'm a big Lakers fan. So I'm glad to see the Lake Show on the way to another championship, hopefully.
Oh, hey, that's perfect that you mentioned that, because, man, now that I'm into just talking sports with people on a daily basis, I did not know there was so much hatred towards LeBron James, man. It's now joining the Lakers. So the one thing I see most is I see a lot of Laker fans who were so they were so big of being Kobe fans. They cannot accept LeBron James being in a Laker uniform. So they're just torn inside. So they want to see the Lakers win, but at the same time, they love to see when LeBron James plays bad. So they love it when he plays bad. They eke out the win, and they can talk about LeBron, but their team advanced. It's a weird it's a weird mix that I see. I don't understand it. But what do you think about the Lakers? And that's the team I really wanted to touch on because they've surprised me the most. Being able to come back and play like they have. Especially, I thought the Clippers were favored over them, and the Clippers just kind of fell apart. I mean, you know, what do you think about the Lakers, and how do you think this final series against Miami is going to play out?
I think the Lakers, so first of all, like I mentioned, I'm a Lakers fan, so I'm sure I'm a little biased. In terms of like LeBron and, you know, like people getting emotionally invested and hating on him, or I think that stuff is stupid. Like, I don't know, me personally, I just like appreciate watching great basketball and great basketball players. Every single person in the NBA is really, really, really good. Like, those dudes don't miss open shots ever. And just the way they make their shots. I mean, the way the ball goes in the net. Like, I just appreciate the craftsmanship and the hours that every single one of those dudes have put in to get to that level. So when you see somebody like LeBron, who's impacting the game at every single level, in every single way, and filling up every single stat category, like, I mean, what is there to hate? You know, like, maybe you don't like the way someone plays, maybe you don't like their, attitude, or, the way they carry themselves, but how can you not appreciate that level of greatness? He really is, whether you like him or not. Like, there's no debating the fact that he's one of the greats of all time. So there's that. I'll say that. In terms of the Lakers, I think it was really interesting after like last offseason, when you saw, obviously Kawhi left, you saw KD leave. But it almost shook out like every team had two superstars. Like, there was no more teams with like more than two. Where in the past, like, obviously the Warriors had a bunch. So everybody, I was excited coming into this season because I wanted to see like what duo would prove to be the best. And I think LeBron and AD are doing that. I think with the Heat, you definitely see more of a complete team. I think the Celtics were like that. They were more of a complete team. But it's hard to deal with two absolute superstars who not only are superstars and really, really good, but they have like freakish like size and athleticism that, makes them impossible to deal with. You got Anthony Davis, who's a 7-footer who's shooting the three ball like a 2-guard off the cut. He's taking people off the bounce. You got LeBron, who can play all 5 positions and is built like a power forward. It's just it's hard to deal with. And then when their role players are making shots, like I'll be honest, like I did not think our team was very talented heading into the playoffs. I know we won some games and things like that, and had a good regular season, but usually you got that third like really key player, right, on every great championship team. But again, I just don't think anybody had that this season. And so, having guys like KCP and, Rondo and Kuzma, who hasn't had a great playoffs, but I guess that's enough, as long as those guys can make plays every now and then, knock down shots. And the one thing I think the Lakers probably don't get enough credit for is I think their role players really defend. They really try to defend. They got bigger guards. And I think that's created some problems for some of these other teams.
Yeah, I think, especially with the Lakers, if you can get, and this isn't for any team in the NBA, if you can get your role players to buy in to a certain role, that's half the battle won right there. And I think the Lakers and LeBron have done a good job, especially with guys like Caruso and other guys coming off the bench. Even Kuzma, even though he's been up and down, of allowing them to buy into a role. And Kuzma's a guy who his rookie year was averaging like 17 a game. He's sacrificing a lot. He's giving up a lot of points. He's coming off the bench.
Kuzma's the one guy that looks lost to me. He looks like the one guy that hasn't really, really found his role on the team. He does. You know what I mean? Yep. In my personal, this is not based on anything, but I think he struggles to defend, and I think he probably gets told that in film sessions and in practice maybe, and so maybe that shook his confidence a little bit. But they need him to score a little bit, right? Like at least we thought that going into the playoffs. And he hasn't been able to do that consistently at all.
You know, when Kuzma plays, and I don't know if you've seen this as well, but I've only recognized it because I struggled with this when I played. He plays as if he forgets the offense. And he looks so sped up and sometimes in little panic that he's not confident. Like you can tell the difference between Caruso on offense and Kuzma on offense. Caruso's a little bit more patient. Like he understands what's going on, what's about to be executed. I don't know what's going on with Kuzma. There's something going on there that's got him out of sorts. He's definitely not the same. I don't think it's unmanageable because at least he's playing hard. And I think that's the difference between him and a guy like Michael Porter Jr., where there were times where Porter Jr. just didn't play hard, or Kuzma at least will play hard and will make some plays. I'll take that over nothing. That's how I feel about Kuzma. The last thing I wanted to touch on, and this is real, it's not necessarily controversial, but at least on my channel, it's been kind of controversial. At least I've spoken on the 90s a lot. I think the 90s was great. I think the talent in the 90s was stretched a bit thin, especially with the addition of the expansion teams. And I'm not I don't give any of those guys in the 90s any leeway for losing to Jordan so much. I don't give them no leeway, and primarily because we hear the 3-6 for LeBron, we hear the 6-0 for Jordan all the time. So I use the same. I call it the Jordan standard. I apply the same championship standard to every player in the 90s, the Barkleys, the Malones, the Ewings. If you don't have the rings, I'm using the Jordan standard against you. I'm going to hold it against you for your career. With regards to 90s basketball to this basketball, there's a consistent theme is there's no defense in the league today. Like, how do you feel basketball has changed from the 90s going into the 2000s and now? Like, is defense absolutely gone? Is it changed? Like, or just are players just that much better? Just from your perspective, what do you think has changed since the 90s?
Okay. Before I answer that, we got to get back to. I want to talk a little more Lakers, but we'll come back to the Lakers.
Yeah.
No. I want to talk Rondo. I want to talk playoff Rondo with you. But first, I'll answer your question about the decades. There's no question. Like, it's not even close. Players can shoot the ball so much better now than they could then, and they can shoot it with so much more range, which obviously puts so much more pressure on the defense because you got to cover more ground, and it's not okay to just get a hand up at a 3-point shooter anymore. Now you really have to like chase them off the line, and not only are you having to do that with like shooting guards and small forwards, now you got to do it sometimes with 4, and with some teams all 5 positions, especially like when you got big guys like the Joker that can shoot the 3 at a high clip, or you play against teams like the Rockets that don't even play a center, and all 5 guys are really capable of knocking down the 3. So that's changed. It's almost like a different game just because of that. And then obviously, they call way more. The rules have changed where you can't put your hands on players as much as you used to be able to. You can't hand check guys. You can't physically, move them as much. I think those rules are good. I'm not one of these people that thinks people that play now are soft because of that. Like, you shouldn't be able to just chuck dudes as they're trying to drive the ball. It makes it a lot harder to defend. But if you watch NBA, like compared to like a college game, they're still physical as shit. You know what I mean? Like, the refs let those dudes play a lot. So I think the rules are fine. I think the way they call it's fine. I think the biggest difference is, you got pretty much every 7-footer in the league now can knock down threes, where in the past you would have small forwards who couldn't shoot. Like, nobody's got a small forward that can't shoot now. The small forward, like, is that even like a position? It's just a wing. So that's it by far, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's true. Now, we can get back to the Lakers because I do appreciate your answer on that. But
Well, what do you think of that? Like, do you agree with that, or you think like, what are your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I mean, what my thoughts are, I think the game is different. Like, the 90s, more physical. I think there's a lot of nostalgia attached to the 90s, especially since it included Michael Jordan. Like, you can remember the NBA on NBC theme song. Like, those games with the Bulls and Knicks, Bulls, Pacers. When those things right there just made the 90s special. But in regards to the talent, the game has changed. Taking away hand checking, it just makes defenders, it makes it harder for guys to defend. I don't think hand checking, I think that was a good move to take hand checking out, because defense should be a skill. You should not allow a built-in foul to give defenders an advantage. They should have to be able to work on their craft at defending and just get better. But guys today, it's just so much talent, man, coming in. And just like we talked about earlier, these guys are playing basketball 12 months out of the year. This is starting in high school, going into college, going into NBA. Like, it's starting to become a profession where you don't take any time off. And so they're coming into the NBA. We see Luka Doncic. He's coming into the NBA looking like a 7-year pro. He's doing things that we've never seen a second-year player do. And this is across the league. We got young guys playing out of their mind. Trae Young, De'Aaron Fox. All of these young guys looking like vets. They're asked to lead teams early. So the NBA, I think it's just a lot more talent, a lot more athleticism, a lot more skill. Maybe the basketball IQs went down somewhat with social media and guys wanting to make that next highlight play. But I think the game is just as good. So I don't really have any beefs toward the 90s. I just think the game has changed somewhat. That's all. I mean,
yeah, I agree with you. I think you're right, though. Like, I don't know if the basketball IQ has decreased. Maybe it has. I don't know. But I do think dribbling is much more acceptable and used a lot more now than it was back in the day. I mean, even if you go back further than the 90s, like if you go back and watch like some of those games in the 80s, I mean, dudes would they would literally hold the ball on the wing. They would wait for cutters, there'd be a lot more screens off the ball, and they'd be patient and try to hit people on the move, like going to the basket. You don't really see much movement off the ball like it used to be with like pin downs, down screens, curls into the lane. You don't see movement like that. The movement that you see now is off like post splits and things like that. So I don't know. I agree with you. The game's.
I think I don't know if they had it in the 60s or 70s. I mean, it's just shot clock. I mean, the shot clock changes everything.
Yeah. Just like ball screens, there's like every offense is pretty much based off ball screens now for the most part. And, you would only used to set ball screens for your point guard.
Yep.
And now you're setting ball screens for, like I said, the Jokers setting ball screens for a 7-footer to come off and make plays. So, yeah, I'm with you. The talent, the size, the athleticism, and the skill level has evolved. And, I mean, it'll keep evolving as long as the game, continues to grow, I think.
That's 100% true. Hey, and you said playoff Rondo, and I have to admit this. After his first game back, when he came back from the hand injury, I was one of the first people to say he didn't look ready. I don't know if it was the conditioning or his timing was off. So I was on him pretty tough after that first game, and he's since proved me extremely wrong because he came back to form very quickly. I didn't think, we saw so many players who came back from injury in the bubble play terribly. I just thought it was going to be a consistent theme with Rondo. He's definitely proved me wrong, and I think he's been that like X factor, allowing LeBron to get some rest off ball, allowing LeBron to play off ball some, and they look like a completely different team when they can play Rondo, LeBron, and AD at the same time, as opposed to just LeBron and AD. And then you can sit LeBron and play Rondo and AD together. It's like, for me, they're one of the hardest teams to guard because of Rondo getting back to form so quickly? Like, wait, what do you think about Rondo so far?
Well, that's why I asked, because like to be completely honest, I haven't been like a huge fan of Rondo's either. And as I watch like the Lakers, especially like I think it's cool when he's with the second unit and it's like him and AD out there. I think that's good, but he's so ball dominant, and I can't argue with it because he's played great. The Lakers have won. Like, what am I talking about here? But like, I think in the fourth quarter, when he's out there still on the ball so much and LeBron's on the wing and AD's in the post, like, I think the ball's got to be in those two dudes' hands. And like, I'd rather not have Rondo out there. Now, he gives you so much though, like decision-making wise, defensively. He's so vocal. You can hear him like on the TV, putting people in the right spots. So who am I to question this? But like at times, like when I'm watching just as a fan, I'm always like, man, get Rondo. Like, okay, Rondo was great in the first 3 quarters. Get him out of there so it can be like LeBron and AD time and surround him with shooters.
Man, he's just with Rondo. He just makes the most timely plays. Like, whenever the other team's on a run, he'll hit a contested 3, something that's not even in his game. It's just like the timeliness of some of the stuff that he does. I can see why it makes it hard for a coach like Vogel to take him out, especially in the fourth.
Every game, I'm like, man, get him out. And then he does something big time. And I'm like, all right, go Rondo. But I will say that I'll give Vogel props because I do think the Lakers might be the deepest team. Like they really play, 10, 11 dudes, and every single one of them contribute. They're all important. And it's really hard to juggle that many dudes. Like that's one thing with coaching that gets overlooked a lot is like, do you stick with your main guys? Do you go into your bench? And like, they've really been consistent playing all those different guys. And again, that's not easy to do.
It's not. I was talking to somebody about that as well. This is back when the Lakers were playing Denver. The Clippers were playing Denver. The Lakers were playing Houston. And I saw something where I said, if they match up, the Lakers are going to win. The one thing that I saw was I was watching the Clippers game. I saw Reggie Jackson sitting on the bench. Obviously, we know in that series, he lost his role. He wasn't getting many minutes. He was just sitting on the bench just looking pissed off the whole game. And then when I transitioned to the Laker game, obviously, in that Houston series, JaVale McGee and Dwight Howard essentially didn't play. But they were standing up, jumping around, cheering the team on, knowing going into each of these games against Houston, they weren't going to play at all. And when I saw that dynamic, I said, is something going on with the Clippers to where they can't even cheer each other on without fans, as opposed to what's going on with the Lakers, where you got 2 guys who know they're not even going to play going into this series off a coach's decision. And not just 2 just average guys. These are 2 vets, with Dwight Howard, who's been a Hall of Famer in this league. JaVale McGee's been a champion with the Warriors. And that's where I saw the 2 different. That's the primary difference that I saw between these 2 teams. That's what made me switch from saying I think LA's going to win it. What do you think about that?
Don't you have to give that credit to LeBron? Have you ever seen a LeBron team where the role players haven't been all in? And I mean, they've certainly gotten beat when their role players haven't performed maybe or been as good or good enough. But I've never seen a LeBron team that has like bad chemistry. Have you?
I mean, that's one thing. That's what I said. You got to give it to LeBron James, because even a coach can only do so much, but your best player really is the one that's going to help you create that culture in your locker room. The same way we saw with Tim Duncan and Greg Popovich. Without Tim Duncan, they don't have that culture and win those 5 championships. And yeah, 100%. I give LeBron credit for that. That's one of the things that's non-basketball related that I think he gets no credit for. I hear a lot of this noise about, oh, he's getting his players traded, oh, he's a bad teammate, or he did this to Dwayne Wade. And I was like, you guys realize, like, you know, at the end of the day, all of his teammates love him. They love playing with him, and they all are winners. They're, you know, they might not succeed in the finals with 6 finals losses, but getting there a lot of times is tough. And to have that type of chemistry everywhere you've went with Cleveland, Miami, now in LA, I think that's something that he just doesn't get credit for.
Yeah, for sure. And a mentor of mine, Tim Ryan, he always says it, man, when your best player is your hardest worker, you really got a chance to be good. And I think there's no questioning that. Even the haters, you know, everyone knows LeBron's work ethic is unmatched. And that's all the greats. Jordan, Kobe, Tim Duncan, like all those guys, you know, were the best player on their team, but they're also their hardest worker. And that just sets a tone for everybody. And that can't be overappreciated. You know what I mean? Like, that's so rare and it's so crucial. And it's something that, like I said, all the greats share in every sport, probably.
I know we talk about the greats, man, and that's why, you know, we'll wrap it up on this, and I'll get your last thoughts on this as well. And I think with LeBron James, and I tell this to a lot of people who have that hate for him. I said, Kobe went through this. Y'all don't really understand it. Kobe went through the same type of hate that you giving LeBron his whole career. He was looked at as a villain for most of his career. And it wasn't until the end of his career when he was about to retire where everybody was like, man, Kobe's about to retire. And he didn't really start getting his praise until he started to retire. And then soon after he retired, we see the tragic incident with the helicopter crash. And now he's passed. Now he's gone. And then you think back at all the hate that was thrown his way during his career. And it's just like, man, with these great players like LeBron, you really got to just appreciate him. He's in year 17. We don't know how many years left of LeBron that we have. I mean, he could retire at year 18 or 19, and it could all be over with just that quick. And like I said, that's why I don't like to harp on and spend much time hating, because we won't see LeBron again maybe for another 20, 30 years. It's just time to start giving guys like that their appreciation. And that's just across the league on all levels. Really just got to start appreciating talent at any level of basketball, as opposed to just throwing out all this hate. Yeah,
no question. I mean, I think you probably find that with every sport, every great that there is. I mean, Jordan went through that. It must be something in human nature to root for the guy on top to get knocked down. You know what I mean? Like, what's the phrase? People like to fall better than to climb, or something like that. So, yeah, I don't really, again, I love to appreciate like greatness, even if it's like a sport that I don't really watch and it's on TV and I'm watching it. Like, I'm trying to pick out the dudes that are, you know, like clearly high level. You know, it could be tennis or whatever. And, you know, I'm going to try to like take something from it, like, man, that person's really locked in, or, you know, whatever. But yeah, I agree. You gotta appreciate the greatness and the hours that go into, you know, working on the craft, and just the, you know, the winning, you know, like the success. You gotta appreciate that. Even if you don't like the person, you gotta appreciate the fact that they've like produced results.
That's true, man. Hey, well, Coach, man, our time is running to an end here. We definitely got to get this wrapped up. But before we get out of here, though, for any aspiring coaches, for any current coaches, man, how can they reach you with Rising Coaches if they want to be a part of that program that you have going on over there?
Yeah, appreciate you asking. Visit risingcoaches.com for all the info. What it is a community. It's inclusive. For basketball coaches. So it doesn't matter what level you're at, high school, NBA. We've got members. We've got over 1,300 coaches who are members. We got them at every level. And we try to hit on 3 things with those coaches. And for our members, we try to provide genuine relationships that'll help you personally and professionally. We try to provide unbelievable resources and content to help you work on your craft. And then the third thing we try to provide is opportunities through our job board, job leads, and our search firm, where we've been fortunate to help a lot of people further their career and get opportunities that are good fits for them personally and professionally. So yeah, if you're interested in coaching, or you are coaching and you're interested in connecting with others and those three things, connecting and improving and advancing, then check out risingcoaches.com.
I appreciate that. Yeah, hey, you guys, I'm going to put that information in the description of the video. If you want to reach out to him directly, I'm going to have all his information down below. But again, I appreciate your time today. Appreciate you coming on the show, sharing your experiences in basketball with us. I think a lot of people are going to get a lot out of this particular interview. But you guys, as we end this show, as I tell you guys always, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell to the video. We have a lot coming up for the show soon. We will be going live 2 hours before Game 2 of the NBA Finals. So make sure you hit that notification bell so you know exactly when we go live and you can participate in those live debates. But again, big ups to Adam Gordon for blessing the FYF podcast today. We will be back. We will be back tomorrow with more sports and news. But as for today, FYF Sports, we're out.